What's up, my fellow scruffy looking nerdfers, and welcome to the Carbonite Chat. Today we're going to be doing a little video on Darth Maul and his unending bloodlust. Now this is a part of my series called The Journey of the Whills, following from the beginning of Canon all the way until an episode 9 comes out. Now this is the last piece of canon that we have that happens before the Phantom Menace. This is following Darth Maul, obviously by the title, and it's kind of following his struggle between him and the Emperor, as the Emperor has been training him up basically his entire life. As we find out from the Sons of Dathomir comic, he was kidnapped from his mother. Emperor Palpatine had went there to train with Mother Talzin and trade secrets of the dark side, and had promised her that she would become his apprentice, and when they went to take over the galaxy, that she would be the number 2 underneath him. While he was there training on Dathomir, he found that she had a son. He was very young at the time, only a few years old, and sensed that he had very strong force powers, and sensed that he had a lot of anger inside of him. Emperor Palpatine, once he learned enough information from Mother Talzin, he decided instead to take Darth Maul. He wanted more of an enforcer, and Mother Talzin's more along the lines of Emperor Palpatine, in which they both use kind of sorcery and magic as opposed to brute force. So he wanted someone that he could build and make into more of a brute force kind of ally or apprentice, much as we see later with Darth Vader. So he takes Darth Maul and raises him up, and throughout the entire time trains him up to be the ultimate Sith. Now there's probably around 20 or so years of Darth Maul being trained by him, and he's probably around the upper 20s, close to younger 30s by the time that the Phantom Menace ends up happening. Now we don't know for sure. He was given an exact age in the old legends, and so I'm trying to stick around that time since they haven't given a new date for his birth and how long he's been alive. So we'll say in his upper 20s to early 30s. He's in the prime of his fighting, and he's been training his entire life and preparing for this. And this is where the issue comes. This is shortly before the Phantom Menace, as I mentioned, and he's ready to attack. He's ready to go. All he's been trained for is to destroy. And so Emperor Palpatine, though, is willing to play the long game. He understands the Sith have been sitting around for 1,000 years preparing for this point, and if the time is not right, if they act too soon, it could destroy everything that they've been working for ever since Darth Bane. So because of this, there's a back and forth and a struggle between the two. And Emperor Palpatine has been allowing Darth Maul to go on these different hunts and trips to try to quench his bloodthirst that he has, but it ultimately is not enough because no one's a challenge for Darth Maul except for possibly Jedi. So when we begin, we start off and he's on a trip with what looks to be like a group of bounty hunters. Now this is connecting with The Force Awakens, a part of The Force Awakens that was my biggest issue. One of my biggest issues with The Force Awakens, I actually would walk out of the theater anytime this appeared, and that was the Rathtars. Now, in the comics, I think it's very fitting. It fits to be on a comic when you advertise a movie that you're not going to do CGI, that it's all going to be, natural effects. I'm blanking on the actual word, but you know what I'm talking about. And then you have a scene with the Rathtars that's 100% CGI. It sticks out like a sore thumb. So I very much hated that. I do like this here. I think they fit perfectly for the role that they play in the comics. And much like Han had been paid a very high sum to capture these Rathtars, we don't meet them, but someone at the beginning of the comics has hired these bounty hunters to find the Rathtars and kind of weaken them and flesh them out so that they can kill them. And they're a big game hunter, and they're essentially just trying to get the honor of being able to kill the Rathtars without much of the threat. So they're walking through there, and the leader of the bounty hunters kind of explaining what they're doing. He's saying, don't forget what the operation is. Don't kill any of these. If we kill any of them, we won't get any money. And as he's walking, he begins to kind of slow down, and he says, on some operations like this, do you ever get the sense that instead of being the predators, that we're actually the prey? And at this point, Rathtar jumps down, and they just get into this huge attack, and the Rathtar very quickly kills all of the bounty hunters that are around. At this point, it begins, you see footsteps coming up, and it says, "Fear anger, hate. These are all the path and the tools to the dark side. I've been trained up in all of these, and it says, I am Darth Maul, and it shows him flying in with this type of axe type thing to attack the Rathtar. And then he begins to talk about the Rathars, how they're hungry, they're vicious. And he then sees that multiple ones come around, and he says, great, pack animals. Now there'll be a challenge for him where one Rathtar's nothing for Darth Maul, so he needs multiple ones. But then he says that the amusement of killing and destroying these creatures, the challenge of it will only quench his thirst for a small time, that his bloodlust will still be just at its furthest end, where he just cannot control it even after having this hunt and kill. And of course he shortly thereafter destroys all of the Rathars, and then he repeats what he said before, vicious, hungry, these aggressive, relentless, attacking beasts. And he says how much he envies their freedom. It then cuts to him being on Coruscant, which he shows there's a Jedi and apprentice wandering around through Coruscant, and he's kind of up on top, secretly hiding and watching them, getting very close, and he's talking about how he's been trained for so long, and all he wants to do is to kill a Jedi. That all these other things that he's doing just won't fulfill his desire, that he has to go and kill a Jedi. So he's following along, and the Jedi Master begins to sense something cold, but he doesn't know what it was. Now, reminds you that at this point, no Jedi have seen a Sith. If you remember from the Phantom Menace, they could not believe that there was even a Sith anywhere to be found when Darth Maul finally reveals himself. So this coldness, they don't understand. They can't connect that to being a Sith. It's been thousands of years, and none of the people alive have sensed it. Possibly Yoda has sensed it, but most likely not, because he's up in his upper 900s, and it's been over 1,000 years. So he has not even sensed it, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people fault the Jedi for not sensing or understanding the dark side being there, but they've never sensed or been around a true Sith that they know of. So these strange feelings that Yoda and Mace Windu continually talk about, sensing and feeling, they can't put it together. They just say there's something dark happening, but they can't grasp it. And especially they can't grasp it because the level and strength and power in the dark side that Emperor Palpatine has. But I'm beginning to explain further into the canon than I mean to right now. It then cuts to Darth Maul and Emperor Palpatine having a conversation. Emperor Palpatine is getting on to him, saying much of what I said before, that he needs to control himself, that if he screws up, that it ruins all of their plans. And he says, I've allowed you to go and do these hunts to try to clinch your bloodlust, and if you continue to do these things, you will mess up my plans. And I don't care what your plans are, your desires or your wants or your passions. My desires and my plans and my passion are the only thing that matters in all of this. And so he says, if you think that the Jedi are the ultimate threat to you, I ask you to please continue to go against my will and try to get close to the Jedi, because it won't be the Jedi that end you. It will be me. I love this combination, this putting together of Sith, Master, and Apprentice. We really don't get that much of it, of the relationship. We get small little pieces, and we got the novel, The Lords of the Sith, which goes into it a little more in depth. But this is really one of those times where we get to see, I love the power and the strength of Emperor Palpatine. We, again, as some people have said because of what happened with Snoke, that we didn't get much from Emperor Palpatine in the original trilogy. I don't like the prequels. But one of the things they did great story-wise is Emperor Palpatine explaining him, his brilliance and calculated just plan that he slowly pieced together, willing to put the time and effort in. And I think even more so than the prequels is in the Clone Wars, where you get to see how he manipulates the Trade Federation, where he ends up to running and getting control of the banking. Everything he does, each little step, is perfectly thought out and planned just so brilliantly. And then how anytime a threat arises, he deals with it. Now, I won't go into too much because I don't know how many of y'all have actually looked into some of the comics and even Clone Wars, and so if anyone here is finding out some of the canon outside of the movies from me, I don't want to spoil stuff for you, as we will get into it as this time goes on. I will cut that off right here. This will be part 1 of the Darth Maul series. That there's 5 comics. I only really covered the first part of the first comic, or 2/3 of the first comic. The next one I will cover probably the next 2 to 3 comics, as they go into a mission that Emperor Palpatine sends him on at the end of this conversation. But I think for this video's purposes that it's a good kind of setup to what we will have to go from this point on. And so thank you guys for watching. I'll post the rest of the playlist for this right here. I will also post my Rebels stuff that I've been doing, as well as my Last Jedi stuff right here. Down below in the links, I'll post a link to my TeePublic page if you would be interested in picking up any of the t-shirts or designs that I've created. That would be absolutely incredible, and I look forward to talking to you about any of your thoughts or comments. Again, guys, thank you very much for watching, and never forget, you Nerf herders, I love you.